When I was growing up, my heroes were the Beatniks. Jack Kerouac, Gary Snyder, Allen Ginsberg. Just saying their names gave me hope. The Beat generation, I'd say, caressing it like a touchstone. And I loved their tales of Neal Cassidy, too. He was the man, hipster, criminal, hero of Jack Kerouac's books. Oh, they all wanted to be like him. Let's go, Neal said, and grand, wild adventures unfolded before them. I knew there'd be girls, visions, everything Jack wrote. Somewhere along the line, I knew the pearl would be handed to me. Oh, yes, I said, longing for the day I'd rush down joyous alleys with those older brothers. Yearned to be like them, to go and go and go. And so as soon as I turned 18, I headed for San Francisco and looked in North Beach for them. But the Beats had already left. Neal had fled ahead of the women he'd wronged, of the law of the locomotives roaring up his back. Neal to Mexico, where old gringos go for a last stand. And he died there too, on railroad tracks between Celaya and San Miguel in desert highlands, counting the ties. We won't get hung up, because we know time, he always said. Everything will be all right because we know time. We know time. We know time. San Miguel to Celaya on the tracks. He was tight as a wire then, flipping a 5-pound hammer, watching it spin, then catching it, flipping, catching, flipping, catching again and again. He was strung out on meth, twitching, tossing, jerking his head. Behind him he heard locomotives catching and flipping and catching again. He was an old gringo by then, and time was an angry locomotive running up his back. So off he went, counting the ties, and just couldn't stop. Kept walking and counting and counting until he dropped. He got hung up, and time stopped. And so when I finally got to San Miguel, 30 years later, Irv was the only beatnik I could find. Because Irv had stopped to live in the dust beside the tracks. Let's go, they all said, but Irv stayed back. Easy to get stuck here, he says. Time slows down. There's no pearl, no future, nowhere to run. Yes, he'd come to San Miguel wild and young, just like Neal and Jack, but on a day of gusty winds when cobblestones radiated heat and the air tasted of diesel and sweat, Irv and Lupe met. Already divorced, with 2 kids, that Lupe wild, but a Mexican still martyr to 1,000 harsh commands. Tuyo, puro calor, she said, her eyes, her hands her breath. He thought he could save her. The price was his blood. Ni modo, she said, así es, no future, no pearl, nowhere to run. Lupe in his arms, legs round his waist, wouldn't let go, wouldn't look up in the dust beside the tracks. And so Irv became Mexican. Ni modo, he shrugged. Worked to support Lupe and her kids. And in time found miracles that come only after your life has been given. Love and work, stone and dust. For 30 years, Irv and Lupe in love and work. And what work it was. Irv and Lupe sold horses' skulls covered with pieces of mirror glass they'd cut into tiny rectangles, then glued over the skulls, filling the workshop with broken reflections of their faces and cutting up their hands. For years, slicing their fingers, leaving blood on glass, thousands of cuts, side by side. Their blood mingling with stone and dust. And so 30 years later, my hero is still a beatnik who fled to Mexico, but Irv's not like other gringos, locked up in themselves, carrying hammers or guns, alone with no work and no love, following railroad tracks. No, today it's Irv who gives me hope, side by side with Lupe in the dust, bound by work and love.